22 years ago, a veteran reporter for the Milwaukee Sentinel vanished without a trace after leaving the newsroom to meet a mysterious source in the Menomonee Valley industrial area, leaving behind a locked car and a cup of coffee still warm on the driver's seat. Authorities suspected a local official was involved, but with no body found and too few clues to proceed, the investigation ultimately stalled. Yet, over 2 decades, a young cold case investigator never gave up hope, believing the disappearance still held an answer somewhere among the forgotten evidence. Then one day, while reviewing the old storage archive, she uncovered a small detail everyone had overlooked, a detail that could change the entire case and shock the city of Milwaukee. Before diving into this haunting story, let us know where you're watching from, and if you love real-life mystery cases, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next episodes. October 2003, Milwaukee was in the midst of seasonal change, the chill from Lake Michigan seeping into every street, casting the industrial city in its characteristic gray of steel and smoke. Menomonee Valley, the old industrial zone in the heart of the city, still retained rows of weathered concrete warehouses and idle smokestacks, becoming a land of silence and suspicion. On Friday afternoon, the last truck convoys left the area, leaving an empty atmosphere where only the wind and the faint rattle of metal on the overpass remained. Elliot Garner, 56 years old, was one of the longest-serving investigative reporters at the Milwaukee Sentinel. He was respected by colleagues for his caution and principles, famous for articles exposing corruption and misconduct in public projects. To him, journalism was not just a job but a way to uphold justice in a city changing too quickly. For months, Garner had been pursuing a new story, the mismanagement of county public land budgets, a sensitive issue involving many in positions of power. He never revealed his sources, not even to his close editor. That day, he left the newsroom as the clock neared the end of the workday, throwing on a dark sweater in his usual habit for the cold, windy season. He told the secretary he had a short meeting and would be back that evening. No one asked further because for Elliot Garner, such meetings were a permanent part of the job. He drove his old silver sedan out of downtown, heading west toward the Menomonee Valley industrial area nestled between rail lines and abandoned warehouses. There, a witness working as a security guard in the area reported seeing Garner park near a 2-story concrete building. He got out of the car, carrying a briefcase, then stood talking to a man in a gray coat at the freight elevator entrance. The conversation seemed brief and calm, after which both went inside. From that moment, no one saw Elliot Garner again. As night fell, the silent industrial area was lit only by the pale yellow glow of streetlights reflecting off cold metal sheets. His car remained parked in place, doors locked, no signs of departure. Around midnight, Garner's cell phone stopped ringing, with calls from the newsroom and family going unanswered. His wife, accustomed to her husband's late nights, began to worry when past midnight there was still no message or call. The next morning, when he still hadn't returned and no one at the newsroom knew where he'd gone, the family decided to contact the Milwaukee Police Department to report him missing. The duty officer recorded information about a middle-aged man, an investigative reporter, out of contact for over 12 hours, whereabouts unknown. The report was quickly passed to the initial response team handling the city's west side. Given Garner's profession and reputation in journalism, the case was classified as a disappearance with special factors, requiring immediate checks at the last known location. 2 patrol cars were dispatched to Menomonee Valley early that morning. The atmosphere in the industrial area was cold and quiet, exhaust smoke from old factory pipes still lingering over the dew-damp roads. Upon arrival, police found Garner's silver sedan parked close to the curb on a narrow road leading into the degraded concrete warehouse complex. The car was locked, windows fully up, no signs of forced entry. Through the glass, his ID papers and coat were neatly on the front seat, no evidence of robbery or struggle. The surrounding area was deserted, only the wind whistling through rusted metal beams. One officer approached the building, described in the witness report from the previous night. The iron freight elevator door was ajar, hinges creaking in the breeze. On the railing near the door, Morning light illuminated a few dried dark brown streaks and a small piece of fabric caught on the lower edge. The details were photographed and noted in the initial report. Inside the warehouse, the concrete floor was dusty. No signs of break-in, but there were a few dark patches on the ground, as if stained by liquid. The smell of old oil lingered, mixed with damp metal. The scene commander decided to seal off the entire surrounding area within a 50-meter radius. Caution tape was strung across the entrance, with 2 officers posted at each end of the road leading to the warehouse. All movement in the area was halted. The forensics team was called in to assist that same morning. When they arrived, scene documentation followed standard procedure. Overall photos, evidence numbering, small samples taken from the stain spots, and the fabric fiber on the metal collected for analysis. Inside Garner's car, items were checked and photographed in place, but not unsealed. Every detail was marked to ensure chain of custody. By noon, the search leader paused interior checks to await results on the railing stains. He noted in the morning report, "Scene shows no clear criminal signs yet, but must preserve state for in-depth analysis." The coordination team also began surveying the area around the warehouse, mapping possible victim movement if leaving on foot. No additional suspicious vehicles found. Part of the rear wall showed faint slide marks in the old dust, but it couldn't yet be determined if caused by person or object. The night guard's witness statement was added. He saw Garner meet a man in a gray coat at the freight elevator around late afternoon. Then both entered and did not come out. When pressed, he said it was getting dark and he heard no argument. All data was sent to the coordination office for the initial file. By late afternoon, the building area was fully sealed. Small access roads to the warehouses temporarily closed to traffic. The preliminary report listed key points. Victim's vehicle found at scene, freight elevator door ajar, dark stains and unidentified fabric present, no clear criminal act yet. All evidence was temporarily sealed, awaiting analysis at the county forensics lab. In the day's final note, the commander wrote briefly, "No concrete evidence, but scene shows signs of unusual interruption." Menomonee Valley sank into a heavy gray afternoon, the warehouse silent under fresh fog, and the name Elliot Garner was first entered into the Milwaukee Police Department's list of unresolved cases. The next morning, the Milwaukee Police Department officially expanded the search radius around the warehouse where Elliot Garner's car was found. The investigation team coordinated with city rescue forces to implement a plan scanning a 3-mile radius from the Menomonee Valley Center. This was a complex terrain area with many old rail lines, abandoned warehouses, technical drainage systems, and construction material yards. The search was divided into 5 directions, each handled by a team, using topographic maps and satellite data from the Urban Planning Office. Priority was checking still operational warehouses, as they had the highest chance of witnesses or civilian cameras. The first group moved along the main industrial road, contacting active facilities, asking if anyone saw unusual people or vehicle movement Friday afternoon. Most workers said the area was nearly empty in the evenings, only a few rotating night guards. The second group surveyed abandoned warehouses to the west. Many buildings degraded, rusted tin roofs and sunken concrete floors. They noted no new break-in signs, thick dust on floors with no footprints. Another team was assigned the technical drainage system running underneath. 2 officers with rescue teamed up, carrying high-power lights and gas detectors, sequentially opening manhole covers, shining down pipes, checking for slide marks or strange objects. No signs of passage. The rail search team went along the southern corridor of Menomonee Valley, connecting to the industrial highway, checking spaces between ties and ground, but recorded no drag marks or strange objects. The reporting officer described flat terrain, no grooves or new disturbances. Simultaneously, the vehicle team checked container lots and temporary parking for nearby transport companies. One guard reported seeing a dark red SUV parked about 2 warehouse rows from where Garner's car was found the previous afternoon. He couldn't recall exact time, only that the vehicle had no company plates and left before dark. Scene notes showed two faint tire tracks on the cement near the west gate, larger than standard sedan size, tread pattern matching GMC Denali, a common SUV in public agencies at the time. Tire samples were photographed, wheelbase measured, filed. Though timing couldn't be confirmed, police flagged it for follow-up. As the search moved into the afternoon, the radius expanded along roads leading to residential edges of Menomonee Valley. Patrols knocked on doors of nearby homes, asking about unusual noises or strange vehicles Friday evening. Most residents said they heard or saw nothing, as the area had little traffic after work hours. Results after 24 hours found no direct trace of Garner or any personal items possibly related. The day's end report stated clearly, "Victim not found, no signs of leaving area by own vehicle." Still, investigators determined more data was needed on Garner's connections before disappearance. That same evening, two officers returned to the Milwaukee Sentinel newsroom to work with editors. They requested a list of everyone who contacted Garner in his final week, including colleagues, regular sources, and individuals tied to his ongoing investigation series. The managing editor handed over the appointment book, work emails, and phone numbers Garner saved. A summary showed in the 3 days prior, he contacted 5 county administrative officials, 2 contractors, and a local prosecutor. Data was extracted, timed, prepared for later cross-checking. Scene search paused at dusk, streetlights casting yellow over the slick cold concrete of Menomonee Valley. Police vehicles departed one by one, leaving only caution tape and spray paint evidence markers. In the day's summary, the commander noted, no direct results but new detail identified, suspected GMC Denali SUV tire marks, near warehouse. Need to cross-reference Garner's contact list to identify vehicle owner. All documents, photos, and witness statements were sent to headquarters before midnight. Outside the windows, fog from Lake Michigan poured down the valley again, enveloping the entire industrial area in a cold white veil, where the only remaining trace was the faint tire marks imprinted on the old cement. When the compiled report on the search results was transferred back to the Milwaukee Police Department, the focus of the investigation shifted to reviewing the list of people Elliot Garner had contacted before disappearing. Data obtained from the newsroom and his work schedule revealed a series of calls, emails, and noted appointments in his final week. Among them, the name Robert Tellen, Assistant District Attorney for Milwaukee County, appeared twice, one of the few administrative contacts directly related to the investigative series Garner was working on. Phone data analysis showed that on the afternoon of the day he went missing, Garner called Tellen from his personal number, with the call lasting less than a minute. Minutes later, Garner's cell signal stopped in the Menomonee Valley area, coinciding with the time he was last seen. This detail led the investigation team to determine that they needed to work with Robert Tellen immediately. The next day, Tellen was invited to the department to provide information. He arrived on time, dressed neatly in a gray suit, with a cooperative attitude. In the first session, he confirmed meeting Garner on Friday afternoon at the old warehouse in Menomonee Valley. According to Tellen, Garner initiated the meeting, saying he wanted to clarify some details about public land use rights related to a project overseen by the prosecutor's office. Tellen described the meeting as short, about 10 minutes, just administrative exchange, and he left while Garner was still there reviewing documents. He emphasized that there was no conflict or argument during the meeting. Police asked why the appointment took place at an abandoned warehouse instead of an office setting. Tellen explained that Garner said it needed to be private because the source did not want to be seen by others. When asked if anyone else witnessed the meeting, he shook his head, saying the area was deserted and he only stopped his vehicle for about 10 minutes before leaving. The initial interrogation notes were compiled. However, the details in Tellen's statement raised suspicions among the investigation team. According to telecommunications company data, Garner's and Tellen's phones connected at 4:09 p.m., after which both devices disconnected from the nearby industrial area cell tower in the same time frame. The technical report noted signals from both devices disappeared within a radius of less than 1 mile, over a period of under 10 minutes. This coincidence made Tellen's stated timeline of leaving before Garner arrived inaccurate. Police continued checking vehicle records. In the list of vehicles entering and exiting the industrial area that afternoon, a burgundy red SUV was recorded, matching the security guard's description. The license plate was obscured by dust, so the camera did not capture it clearly, but the size and style matched the GMC Denali line, a government vehicle model provided by the county to certain officials, including Tellen's office. When asked about this, he confirmed using the government vehicle that day, but only to go to the scene and return to the office. He presented a handwritten log with departure and arrival timestamps, but both marks were manual, without system verification. The investigation team temporarily retained the log, placed the vehicle under verification, but lacked sufficient grounds for a search warrant. Internally at the department, a brief meeting was held to assess the situation. All new signs pointed to the hypothesis that Garner may have disappeared right after meeting Tellen, but there was still no evidence confirming criminal activity. The legal report required the next verification steps, cross-referencing Tellen's schedule on October 17, comparing phone locations, and searching for additional witnesses in the area. The technical team was assigned to cross-reference cell tower data, determining the simultaneous signal loss period between the two devices. Preliminary results reinforced the assumption that Tellen remained in the Menomonee Valley coverage area for at least 15 minutes after the final call. Meanwhile, government vehicle location data could not be extracted because in 2003, mandatory GPS systems were not yet implemented on administrative vehicles. Police further interviewed several staff in the prosecutor's office, asking about the relationship between the two men. Colleagues described Tellen as reserved and strict, with one instance of a heated argument with Garner over the content of an old article. However, no one believed he had personal animosity. All this information was included in a supplemental report and sent to the commanding officer in charge of the case. At the end of the summary, the investigating officer noted, "Robert Tellen is the last confirmed person to meet Elliot Garner, with timing matching the signal loss period. Insufficient elements for prosecution need further monitoring." The case file was updated, adding his name to the person of interest section. At that point, this was the only clue directly linking a specific individual to reporter Elliot Garner's disappearance. Despite the lack of physical evidence, the scattered data fragments, the short call, the SUV, the inconsistent statements, pushed the investigation into a more cautious phase. In that week's summary report, the team leader wrote the final note, "No one besides Robert Tellen can confirm Garner's condition after Friday afternoon. He is the last known person to have met the victim." While the investigation team continued verifying Robert Tell's statements, the Forensic Technical Department began examining the samples collected at the Menomonee Valley warehouse scene. All evidence was handed over to the Milwaukee Police Department's laboratory that Monday morning. Technicians unsealed each bag, carefully noting codes and collection locations to ensure chain of custody. The first sample was a metal railing section with dark brown streaks, cut to about 17 centimeters long, wrapped in specialized nylon bags. Testing with peroxidase reaction yielded positive for hemoglobin, confirming it was human blood. Subsequent tests determined the blood type, resulting in B+. Comparison with medical records provided by the family showed this matched Elliot Garner's blood type, the interim report concluded. The liquid sample from the freight elevator railing is highly likely to belong to the victim. However, DNA analysis technology at the time was still limited. The sample was too small, just a few milliliters of dried blood, preventing the lab from extracting a stable gene sequence. The responsible technician confirmed in the minutes insufficient biological material for identity DNA matching. Additional samples needed if available. Thus, the examination results stopped at blood type identification. Other samples were opened the same day. The second bag contained a dark-colored fabric fiber taken from the metal frame near the freight elevator door. Testing showed it was polyester cotton blend, common in work protective clothing. No distinctive marks or labels to trace origin. The next sample was a faint shoe print in the dust at the rear warehouse entrance. Scene photos showed the left shoe print clearer, length 31 centimeters. After cleaning and standard measurement, it was determined to be size 11, rubber sole type used in Red Wing work boots, a product under county contract supplied to some local agencies in the early 2000s. Internal documents confirmed this boot line was issued to administrative staff, maintenance, and certain public service departments. However, without a specific comparison sample, this detail was noted only as male shoe print, size and type common in government agencies. Forensic experts also examined dust and residue around the railing area. Results found no traces of oil, paint, or materials indicating a struggle. No usable fingerprints or prints on the metal surface, mostly rusted and dust-covered. All information was compiled in an 11-page preliminary forensic report. The conclusion stated clearly, no clear criminal act determined. Primary sample is human blood type B+, corresponding to victim's medical data. Shoe prints and surrounding materials insufficient to conclude third-party involvement. After the report was transferred to the investigation team, an internal meeting was held to evaluate results. The lead officer stated that current findings only confirmed Garner's presence at the warehouse, unable to prove altercation or violence. The absence of a body, witnesses, and camera footage meant all hypotheses remained speculative. The technical team rechecked the entire area for additional evidence, but found nothing new. Security cameras from nearby businesses were either inoperative or did not retain data long enough. The city's traffic system at the time also lacked street cameras, as in later years, making tracing Garner's route after leaving the newsroom impossible. From the prosecutor's office side, the attending representative concluded that initial forensic results were insufficient for search warrants or criminal charges against any individual. The final report of the first investigation phase was compiled at month's end, classifying the case as missing under unclear circumstances, with suspicious elements but lacking direct evidence. The file was transferred to the department's records room for temporary storage, while maintaining an open case number until new data. In the final note, the lead investigator wrote briefly, "Scene shows blood presence and male shoe prints, but insufficient information to determine incident nature. No witnesses, no cameras, no additional evidence." After nearly a month of work, Elliot Garner's disappearance case temporarily halted at the initial information collection phase. All evidence was resealed in specialized boxes, transferred to Milwaukee County's storage warehouse, awaiting further analysis if new requests arose. Outside Menomonee Valley, the warehouse rows remained silent, and on paper, the case was classified as under monitoring, insufficient data for prosecution. Time passed without any significant progress. From early 2004, after dozens of internal meetings, the Milwaukee Police Department had to admit that Elliot Garner's disappearance had reached a deadlock. Additional forensic reports submitted only reiterated old results. B+ blood stain, size 11 male shoe print, no witnesses, no new data. The investigation agency collected no further evidence, nor found any financial signals or contacts from Garner after the disappearance time. All information stopped at Friday afternoon, where the old warehouse lay silent in Menomonee Valley. His family continued contacting police, hoping for news, but each response was the same. The case could not progress due to lack of data. After 6 months of review, the investigation head signed a document proposing to change the case status to missing presumed dead, missing and presumed deceased. The conclusion minutes stated clearly, insufficient grounds to determine criminal act, no traces leaving the city, likelihood of victim survival, very low. This decision was approved in April 2004, officially closing the active investigation phase. All remaining evidence was cataloged and handed over to the Milwaukee County Storage Unit. Each sealed bag was labeled, numbered, and signed for confirmation. The main evidence box included a metal railing section with blood stain, a fabric fiber sample, copies of scene photos, warehouse area sketch, and forensic technical reports. These items were placed in a specialized steel cabinet, sealed with lead and long-term preservation stickers. The case storage code was MG2347, numbered by time sequence in the year, with note E. Garner, missing. Per county regulations, evidence in undetermined crime cases would be stored for at least 10 years before considering destruction or extension. The storage officer noted in the log, condition intact, no further processing required. After completing the handover, the main investigation team was officially disbanded. The case administrative file of 137 pages was bound and sent to the department's central storage warehouse. A copy was transferred to the county prosecutor's office for judicial records. The case name, Elliot Garner Missing, was assigned a code in Wisconsin's list of unsolved missing persons cases. On the Garner family side, they held a small memorial at the local church that summer, as a way to say goodbye with no hope of finding their loved one. The final article, in the Milwaukee Sentinel about the case, appeared in the brief news section, just a few lines. No new developments in reporter Elliot Garner's disappearance. Police continue encouraging public information if available. After that article, his name gradually faded from news pages, making way for the city's new events. In 2005, the Menomonee Valley industrial area was added to the redevelopment list. Abandoned warehouses along the industrial route were cleared, including the building where Garner was last seen. Demolition occurred in early 2006, when the construction company leveled the entire area to build a parking lot and material recycling plant. Before construction began, county police were notified and sent representatives for preliminary checks. A technical team was allowed to scan the area one last time, but found nothing noteworthy. Afterward, the location was officially removed from the investigation map. In the department's records warehouse, Garner's case documents were filed in slot 47, clipped between two other files from the same year. On the cover was typed "Cause Undetermined, Insufficient Criminal Elements." That was the last time the case was mentioned in internal meetings. In subsequent years, Milwaukee's missing persons list grew longer, and Elliot Garner's file became just one line in the old data catalog. From a professional perspective, the case was considered temporarily closed, insufficient evidence to reopen. In the department's 2004 summary report, the investigation head wrote briefly, "Garner case, no progress. Evidence in long-term storage." Officers who participated gradually transferred to other duties. New ones no longer knew the name. All that remained of a reporter, once dedicated to the truth, now lay in a metal box lined up with hundreds of others, where dust accumulated over the years. By the end of the decade, the file code MG2347 remained unchanged. No new updates, no additional notes. Inside the storage warehouse, the case evidence box sat on shelf 47 in the dozens of meters-long metal row, among hundreds of other cold case files. The seal remained intact. Lead wire unreplaced. Each year, warehouse staff only noted inventory status. Unopened, no re-examination request. No one from the old investigation team remained in their original positions. Many had retired or transferred. The police department entered a personnel restructuring period. Leadership changes and old cases became faint memories in the legal data warehouse. The Garner case, once heavily covered by the press, now just one line in Wisconsin's list of over 70 unsolved missing persons cases. The family never stopped submitting petitions. In 2007, Garner's wife sent a letter requesting permission for an independent investigation unit to review the file again, but the county prosecutor responded that there are no legal grounds to reopen the case without new evidence. Subsequent letters in 2010, 2014, and 2018 all received the same result. The case remained closed with no reason for re-examination. Garner's eldest son, who had by then taken his father's place as a reporter at a local newspaper, once tried to access the case's public documents through the Freedom of Information Act, but was denied due to impact on the integrity of criminal records. The family was only allowed to receive a 10-page summary copy, which contained no valuable technical details. Meanwhile, the case evidence remained untouched in the central storage warehouse. Each year, the administrative department conducted periodic inventory to ensure preservation conditions. The 2012 minutes confirmed the evidence box was intact, with the lead seal unbroken. By 2018, the warehouse transitioned to a digital storage system, and the file code, MG2347, was re-entered into the new database without content changes. The responsible staff added a note: "File has no re-examination request. Evidence stable." 19 years passed, and no one mentioned the case in internal meetings. Changes in the city also caused memories of Garner to fade. Menomonee Valley had been transformed. Old factories gave way to shopping centers, parking lots, and riverside conservation areas. The site of the abandoned warehouse where he was last seen was now a new industrial park with young trees and shiny directional signs. No trace remained to recall the 2003 story. Only longtime residents of the area, when reminded, vaguely remembered that a reporter once disappeared here. In 2020, the Milwaukee Police Department began implementing a comprehensive modernization plan for its investigation system, including reviewing unsolved cases. At the same time, new generation DNA analysis technology allowed re-examination of small samples, opening the possibility of recovering biological data previously deemed insufficient in quantity. Neighboring states began establishing units specializing in old cases, and Milwaukee was recommended to do the same to reduce backlog. After nearly 2 years of preparation, in early 2022, the department officially announced the establishment of the Cold Case and Evidence Re-Examination Unit. The Cold Case and Evidence Re-Examination Unit. Detective Layla Myers, 32 years old, was assigned to lead this team. She had previously worked in the Forensic Technical Department before transferring to General Investigations, with experience handling long-term cases and expertise in modern DNA technology. Her first task was to review old evidence in the Milwaukee County Central Storage Warehouse, home to thousands of evidence boxes from the 1980s to the early 2000s. Each file had a code, label, and brief note on current status. In the windowless concrete room, temperature was maintained at 16 degrees Celsius for evidence preservation. Steel shelves stretched in multiple rows, numbered by year. While browsing the electronic catalog, Layla noticed a rarely updated file code, MG2347, blood stain, not DNA analyzed. She opened the detailed entry and realized this was a disappearance case from nearly 20 years earlier, involving a journalist named Elliot Garner. The system note had only a few lines. Evidence includes steel railing with blood fabric fibers, seen photos. Insufficient sample for DNA extraction, 2004. All subsequent updates were annual inventory notes, with no additional analysis requests. The last entry from 2018 read, "Evidence stable, not reopened." The monotonous repetition of the notes made Layla pause longer than usual. Under the new procedure, any biological sample still preserved in good condition must be retested using STR-mix and YSTR technologies, which allowed DNA amplification even from just a few cells. She accessed the evidence management system, cross-referenced the storage location, then went to shelf number 47. On the middle tier, a gray-painted metal box with a faded label appeared. The lead seal was still intact, covered with multiple layers of inventory note stickers. Layla photographed it, confirmed the seal number, then signed the box opening minutes per procedure. Inside, all samples were individually wrapped, a steel railing section about 20 centimeters long, 2 fiber material bags, an envelope containing scene photos and original minutes. Everything was dry, with no signs of mold. Reading the description again, she saw a 2003 technician's handwritten note, "Small blood sample, dark color, possibly victims." Below it, another line underlined in red. Insufficient material for DNA analysis. With the technology at that time, this meant the case could not progress. Layla separated the railing sample from the main bag, carefully scraping the remaining dried blood from the metal into a new specialized vial. The sampling process was fully recorded per state regulations to ensure legality. After completion, she applied a new code and electronically sealed the vial. All actions were entered into the management system with her digital signature and the warehouse supervisor's. Simultaneously, she submitted an official request to the Wisconsin State DNA Laboratory, which was operating new generation STR analysis equipment capable of amplifying biological material at extremely low levels. In the attached proposal, Lila clearly stated the objective: analyze unidentified blood sample from evidence MG 2347 to determine viable DNA profile. Compare with state missing persons database. 3 days later, the laboratory confirmed receipt of the sample and began preliminary testing. Lila monitored the entire process through the electronic system. While awaiting results, she thoroughly read the entire Garner case file. The original report described a disappearance without clues, the scene an industrial warehouse, with only a B+ blood stain, male shoe print, and no body. All examination results, at the time, stopped at insufficient information. On the margin of a 2004 fax copy, she noticed a handwritten note in black ink: DNA undetermined, may retain for future technology. That old note gave Lila a strange and somewhat haunting feeling, as if the technician from years ago had left a message for the next generation. While reviewing other related cases from the same year, she found very few still retained intact biological samples after nearly 2 decades. Many pieces of evidence had been destroyed due to damage or lack of preservation conditions. The fact that Garner's blood sample remained perfectly intact was rare. She added an internal note: evidence suitable for reanalysis, high DNA recovery potential. This report was later submitted to the unit head for approval. That weekend, the sample was officially transported by specialized vehicle to the state laboratory, accompanied by all original documents for comparison. Upon completing the procedures, Lila closed the evidence box, returned it to its original position on the shelf, then stood silently for a moment in front of the dusty file rows. Hundreds of other cases lay dormant there, each box an unfinished story from the past. In her work log that day, there was only one short line: submitted MG 2347 sample to Wisconsin State DNA Lab, awaiting results. That note to the data entry staff was just a routine update. But to Lila, it marked the beginning of re-examining a case the city had forgotten for 19 years. Nearly 3 weeks after the sample was sent to the Wisconsin State DNA Laboratory, the official results were returned to the Milwaukee Police Department. The report was nearly 30 pages thick, accompanied by technical data files and electronic scans of the sample. Right in the first line of the summary section, the experts clearly stated, the blood sample collected from evidence MG 2347 contains 2 distinct DNA sequences. One was the primary sample, belonging to a male victim with blood type B+, corresponding to Elliot Garner's stored medical information. The other was a secondary DNA, with a lower contribution ratio, but still clear enough for STR mix analysis. This second sequence was compared with Wisconsin's criminal and administrative databases. The results showed a complete match with a DNA sample stored in the personnel file of a current public official, Robert Tellen, the person previously identified as the last to meet Garner in 2003. The laboratory determined the match probability at 99.9, 9999, 9999, 999999%, equivalent to 1 in a billion. The report concluded, this is an absolute match, impossible by chance. Additionally, experts confirmed no signs of contamination or degradation during preservation. All verification steps complied with FBI standards and were repeated on 2 independent systems. When the results reached the cold case unit, Detective Lila Myers was the first to review them. She read every line carefully, cross-referenced with the old file, then paused at the conclusion. 2 DNA samples belonged to 2 separate individuals, with direct contact at the time the trace was left. The dry wording carried a weight that made the office space seem to freeze. 20 years earlier, a reporter's disappearance was considered an unsolvable mystery. Now, the first physical evidence had directly named the person involved. Lila presented the report to the unit head that same morning. An emergency meeting was convened between the cold case unit and representatives from the state prosecutor's office. She presented the entire process chain: evidence discovery, seal breaking, sampling, testing submission, and result receipt. Everything was recorded, with complete minutes, no procedural errors. Attending DNA experts confirmed the sample's reliability and stated that these results are sufficient as state-level legal evidence. The chief prosecutor, after reading the summary, requested the technical department to provide a second independent report for cross-verification. The remaining blood sample was sent in parallel to a private laboratory, cooperating with the Wisconsin Department of Justice. The supplemental results, returned after 72 hours, matched the initial findings exactly. In the internal meeting that afternoon, the state prosecutor officially approved the request to reopen the criminal investigation into the Elliot Garner case. The minutes clearly stated, based on DNA results confirming the presence of two individuals at the scene, one matching public official Robert Tellen, the case status is changed from missing presumed dead to homicide, reopened investigation. This was the first time in 19 years that file, MG 2003-47, was removed from the cold case list. Immediately after the decision was signed, Lila Myers was appointed lead investigator. She was tasked with planning a comprehensive re-examination, including rechecking all initial data, reviewing witnesses, cross-referencing Tellen's records, and determining the movement chain on October 17, 2003. Coordinating federal and county units were notified to keep information confidential until an official announcement. Internally, the case was labeled Priority Level 1, the highest in the Cold Case Division's investigation catalog. Lila spent hours reviewing the old files. All documents were yellowed, many pages faded. Next to the initial forensic results was a 2003 technician's note: insufficient DNA for comparison, retained sample for future capability. She reread that line, understanding that the future capability the technician wrote 20 years ago was this very moment. Evidence once thought useless had now become the key to reopening the entire case. A summary report was prepared for submission to the state prosecutor, clearly stating the basis for re-investigation. The conclusion drafted by Lila read, DNA evidence confirms physical contact between victim Elliot Garner and state official Robert Tellen at the disappearance scene. Cannot rule out violence or concealment. The report was approved by the weekend. Simultaneously, the state prosecutor sent an official document to the police chief's office, requesting case reopening and establishment of a dedicated investigation team under direct command of the cold case unit. The next day, the Garner case DNA data was updated in the federal CODIS system with confirmed match status. This was the first time since 2003 that Robert Tellen's name reappeared in the state's criminal database, no longer as a witness, but as a directly involved individual. The Milwaukee Police Department issued an internal notice, Case MG 2003-47 reactivated. Lead investigator, Detective Lila Myers. Status: active investigation. In the cold case office, Lila looked at the computer screen displaying the newly updated data lines, case code, victim name, and the latest note, DNA match with identified individual. She saved the file, closed the system, then opened the old paper file again, reading each page slowly, as if connecting two timelines nearly 2 decades apart. Everything was starting again from the exact point where it had once stopped, a dried blood streak on a steel railing, now speaking what 2003 technology could not. In her work log, Lila wrote a short line, confirmed DNA sequence match, Garner file officially reopened. Immediately, after receiving official investigative authority, Detective Lila Myers began reconstructing Elliot Garner's entire itinerary on October 17, 2003, the day he disappeared. She reopened old records, reviewed every timeline in the newsroom files, phone logs, and witness statements. Data collected at the time was fragmented, mostly fax prints and handwritten notes, but still sufficient to reconstruct the movement sequence. That morning, Garner was at the Milwaukee Sentinel newsroom, attending a brief editorial meeting at 9 a.m. He left the meeting room around 10:30, made 3 phone calls related to the investigative series he was writing. The final call, per the telecommunications company log, was to Robert Tellen at 4:09 p.m., lasting 53 seconds. After that moment, all traces of Garner ceased. Leila reconstructed the travel map in the police GIS system using data from old cell towers. Garner's phone's last location was recorded in the Menomonee Valley industrial area, nearly 5 miles from the newsroom. That was also where the silver sedan and the blood-stained scene were found. She marked each stop, drew the projected route from downtown, turning onto the industrial road, entering the abandoned warehouse area, a route with little traffic in the afternoon. From there, Leila redetermined Robert Tellen's signal loss time frame. His data suspiciously matched. Phone signal cut off at the same time as Garner's and only reactivated at 5:12 p.m., about 2 miles from the scene. Those dry numbers, when layered together, formed a faint connecting line between the 2 men, a line no one had noticed for 2 decades. To strengthen the data, Leila requested access to the county prosecutor's office vehicle records where Tellen had worked. In the electronic archive, she discovered the October 2003 government vehicle usage report. It listed a burgundy GMC Denali with license plate 8H392, registered to the prosecutor's office, recorded as used on October 17, with signature R. Tellen. The itinerary log noted departure at 3:30 and return at 5:15 p.m. The line brief meeting at administrative area was added in blue ink, without superior confirmation and no specific official purpose. Leila zoomed in on the handwriting, noticing the strokes did not match the signature at the bottom. A document expert was brought in to determine that the administrative area note was added later, not at the same time as the rest. This proved the itinerary report had been altered. She continued searching for other supporting data. The County Department of Transportation archives indicated that the red Denali was a 2002 generation model without GPS tracking, but with a periodic maintenance system. In the November 2003 maintenance record, there was an entry for car wash and floor mat replacement, an unusual detail because government vehicles were rarely cleaned individually, outside regular maintenance cycles. Leila noted this detail in the report, marking it as alteration of vehicle condition post-event. To find visual evidence, she contacted the Federal Bureau of Investigation for assistance in recovering old video files. A federal technician provided a catalog of security cameras operating around the Menomonee Valley area in 2003, including one located at Postal Depot number 14, about half a mile from the scene. The original data had long been deleted, but the National Archives system retained a copy from an old surveillance image recovery project. After more than a week of searching, the technical team recovered a 17-second video segment recorded at approximately 4:37 p.m. on October 17, 2003. The image quality was blurry, colors faded, but the frame clearly showed a dark red SUV moving slowly through the intersection, heading toward the warehouse area where Garner was last seen. Headlights on, driver's side window halfway down. The vehicle shape, body length, and chrome trim layout matched the 2002 Denali model exactly. Leila projected the frame onto the large screen in the cold case unit meeting room. Other officers stood around, watching in silence. Though the license plate was not visible, they all understood the significance of this video. It placed Tellen's vehicle in the scene area within the exact time frame of Garner's disappearance. To ensure objectivity, Leila sent the video to the FBI's Image Analysis Department in Quantico. The response report confirmed that vehicle type, shape, and color tone matched the GMC Denali registered to the Milwaukee County Prosecutor's Office. Moreover, sunlight reflection on the car door revealed part of the license plate characters, the initial 8H fully matching the record. From this data, Leila created a composite diagram simulating Garner's entire movement that afternoon. Starting at 3:15 p.m., he left the newsroom, heading southwest across Canal Street Bridge, stopping in Menomonee Valley around 4 p.m. "There," he called Tellen. 10 minutes later, a red SUV appeared near the warehouse area. At 4:37 p.m., the Postal Depot camera captured the vehicle moving toward the scene. After that moment, Garner's phone lost signal, and from 5:12 p.m., Tellen's signal reappeared in the Franklin area, 8 miles away. The summary report Lila submitted to the state prosecutor concluded, location data, vehicle records, and surveillance footage show alignment between the victims' and suspects' travel paths in the same time frame. No reasonable coincidental factor explains this overlap. The prosecutor signed confirmation, requesting continued in-depth investigation. In the internal document, case MG 2347 was upgraded in priority. The scattered timelines from 20 years ago were finally connected. A reporter leaving the newsroom to meet a source, an official leaving the office without clear disclosure, and a red SUV appearing at the exact place and time where one man's traces ended. Lila sat looking at the map before her, the lines and symbols now forming a single image, the path to Elliot Garner's final afternoon. In April 2022, as the reopened Garner investigation entered the phase of recollecting all original documents, a new detail emerged from an unexpected place, the old Milwaukee Sentinel storage archive. During the reorganization of the newsroom's inventory, which had just moved to a new headquarters, a logistics employee named Daniel Price discovered an old cardboard box pushed into the corner of a basement filing cabinet. The label on the outside had faded, with only a few blurry words readable, e.g. belongings, 2003. Upon opening the lid, inside were a few personal items: a reporter's notebook, a silver fountain pen, a broken corner business card, and notably a straw hat with light brown trim, still bearing dark streaks on the crown. A folded receipt inside the box noted the submission date as 10/2003, stored with Elliot Garner's belongings. It seemed that after Garner's disappearance, his colleagues had cleared his desk and stored all remaining items, and through multiple warehouse moves, this box had been mixed in with old assets. Upon hearing the news, Lila Myers immediately contacted the newsroom management, requesting temporary custody of the evidence for examination. She and 2 forensic technicians arrived at the warehouse that same afternoon, proceeding to draft a receipt protocol. The hat was placed in a separate nylon bag, carefully wrapped to prevent cross-contamination. Initial observation showed the inner brim had dark reddish-brown streaks, mixed with lighter patches, like old sweat stains. An elderly newsroom employee confirmed it was the hat reporter Garner often wore when working in the field. He recounted that Garner rarely left his desk without it. He called it his lucky charm for the job. This detail was recorded in the report, along with the witness statement. The new evidence was immediately transferred to the Milwaukee County Forensic Technical Lab. After unsealing, technicians conducted ultraviolet scanning to locate biological trace areas. On the left inner side of the hat, they detected a small dried blood spot, right at the seam edge. The sample was separated using cold scraping technique, divided into 2 parts. One for DNA analysis, the other preserved for comparison. Additionally, the brim area was scanned for epithelial cells. Results showed biological traces of a different gender from the victim. All procedures followed standard protocols, under supervision by a prosecutor representative. 3 days later, the DNA examination results were sent to the cold case unit. The report clearly stated, blood sample on the hat belongs to victim Elliot Garner. On the same object appears secondary DNA, matching the identity profile of Robert Tellen. STR amplification showed absolute consistency across 14 genetic loci, sufficient to identify an individual without further verification. The report concluded, simultaneous presence of 2 DNA sequences proves direct contact between the 2 individuals at the same time, or within the same physical space. Lila carefully read the results, comparing them with the old blood sample data from the warehouse railing. 2 pieces of evidence, nearly 20 years apart, both carried the same DNA pair, Garner and Tellen. One collected at the disappearance scene, the other found among the victim's personal belongings. This match not only eliminated coincidence, but also created a logical physical chain. Same contact source, same second individual, same temporal context. In the summary minutes sent to the state prosecutor, she wrote, "Two independent pieces of evidence confirm Robert Tellen's presence within close contact range of the victim. Statistical reliability at absolute level. No reasonable data explains Tellen's DNA presence outside direct contact scenario." The examination results were presented at an internal meeting that same week. All officers involved agreed that this discovery solidly reinforced the suspect chain. The case prosecutor requested a full comparison table of all DNA evidence, including sampling time, preservation process, analysis results, and verification methods. Lila presented before the technical panel, affirming no chain of custody discrepancies between the two samples. All were stored per regulation, with monitoring logs, no external exposure. When the new discovery information was officially recorded in the system, file code MG2347 was upgraded from reopened to active investigation, phase 2. Lila updated the daily report. Additional evidence from victims' personal belongings reinforces DNA data chain. Confirmed bidirectional match between scene evidence and stored evidence. She attached electronic scans of the DNA samples where the genetic bands on both sides appeared nearly identical. When the straw hat examination results were released and confirmed to fully match Robert Tellen's DNA, the Elliot Garner case entered a pivotal phase. Detective Lila Myers spent many days reviewing the entire file, linking scattered evidence chains into a single logical system. On her desk, the Menomonee Valley map hung covered in color-coded symbols, red dots marking the warehouse scene, yellow for the SUV camera location, and two overlapping symbols, steel railing and straw hat, connected by a solid line. Beneath each point, she taped notes, Garner DNA, Tellen DNA. It was no longer suspicion, but a complete structure of an act. In the comprehensive report sent to the Wisconsin State Prosecutor, Lila presented the evidence chain in 4 main parts. First was biological evidence, consisting of 2 independent DNA samples from different locations, both confirming direct contact between Garner and Tellen. Second was vehicle behavior, shown through the prosecutor's office. Red GMC Denali, being used outside official hours on the disappearance day, supported by Postal Depot camera footage, proving the vehicle's presence near the scene. Third was itinerary record alteration. Evidence that Tellen's travel report showed signs of editing, with the later added administrative area line in different ink. Fourth was phone signal timing alignment, proving both individuals lost signal for about 10 minutes in the Menomonee Valley area. All these factors, in investigative terms, formed a closed evidence chain. The over 40-page report was printed and sent to the prosecutor's office in mid-August 2023. In the final recommendation section, Lila proposed issuing an arrest warrant for Robert Tellen on charges of direct involvement in the disappearance and suspected homicide without recovered body of Elliot Garner. She added, "This is a case where DNA fully reinforces the physical connection between suspect and victim, inexplicable by alternative hypotheses." The report was carefully reviewed by Wisconsin State Chief Prosecutor Margaret Holbrook for a full week. She formed a separate legal team to re-verify the entire sampling, testing, and evidence preservation process. When all information was validated, she signed the final section in blue ink, with the note, "Approved, probable cause established." On August 28th, the arrest warrant was officially drafted and sent to the Milwaukee County Court for approval. After the judge signed confirmation, the document was transferred to the Franklin Police Department, where Tellen currently resided with his wife. Civil records showed he had retired from the prosecutor's office in 2018 and moved to a southern suburb. Files indicated he remained active in the community, participating in charitable organizations with no prior convictions, maintaining the image of a model public servant. For this reason, the issuance of the arrest warrant was kept absolutely confidential until the last moment. A special execution team was formed, consisting of 6 Franklin police officers coordinating with 2 cold case unit agents. Lila did not directly participate in the arrest, but was responsible for coordination and identity verification at the scene. In the preparation meeting, she presented the plan: arrest in the early morning, ensure safety, avoid media attention. A surveillance team was dispatched to the South 51st Street residential area to monitor Tellen's home, recording daily routines. Over 3 days of observation, he came and went on schedule, usually walking in the morning and returning before 9 a.m. September 6, 2023, was selected as the action date. That morning, the Franklin air was still misty. At 6:20 a.m., 3 unmarked police vehicles stopped 2 blocks from Tellen's house. The team leader signaled via radio, Team 2 approach. 2 officers knocked on the front door, while Team 3 secured the rear exit. When the door opened, Robert Tellen appeared in a gray tracksuit, eyes surprised but calm. The lead officer read the arrest warrant aloud. "Mr. Robert Tellen, by order of the Milwaukee County Court, you are under arrest in connection with criminal case number MG 2003-47. He did not react violently, only asking, "The Garner case?" A brief silence passed before police instructed him to raise his hands. Tellen complied, without resistance. Handcuffs were secured, the warrant read again to ensure procedure. As he was led out of the house, neighbors began pulling curtains to look. No one understood what was happening. One woman recognized him as the former prosecutor from community programs and whispered, "Must be a mistake." But there was no mistake in the documents Lila held at cold case headquarters. All evidence had been triple verified. Tellen was taken to the Franklin Police Department's temporary holding cell, awaiting transfer to Milwaukee for interrogation. In the official report submitted immediately after warrant execution, Lila clearly noted, at 6:42 on September 6, 2023, suspect Robert Tellen was arrested at residence, per warrant No. 23-458 WI. No incidents, no resistance. Seized evidence includes phone, laptop, and personal vehicle. The report was signed by 3 witnessing officers and the state prosecutor. That same day, the news was not widely released. The case remained classified to ensure the investigation process. Reading the line, "Probable cause established" on the arrest warrant again, Lila felt a mix of satisfaction and weight. 20 years had passed, and a chain of data once thought never to intersect had finally converged into the first legal action. From a blood streak on a railing and a forgotten hat in an old warehouse, the entire case was reconstructed into form. In her work log that day, she wrote only one line, concise and cold: "Arrest warrant. Executed successfully. Suspect Robert Tellen." Robert Tellen was transferred to the Milwaukee Police Department headquarters at noon the same day after his arrest. In the second-floor interrogation room, everything was prepared: recording camera, minutes, 2 witnessing officers, and Detective Lila Myers, the lead investigator. When the door closed, the atmosphere in the small room became heavy, white light from the bulbs, reflecting off the cold metal table. Tellen sat straight-backed, hands clasped, face maintaining the calm of someone accustomed to being on the opposite side of the interrogation table. He looked around the room, eyes pausing on the running recorder, then said in an even voice, "I want to make it clear from the start that I did not kill Elliot Garner. I was there, but it was an accident." Lila kept a neutral tone, asking him to recount the entire incident as he remembered it. Tellen took a deep breath, beginning to describe how Garner had actively arranged to meet him at the Menomonee Valley warehouse that afternoon for a private discussion about an article related to public land projects. He said, "The initial conversation was normal, but then Garner became aggressive, accusing Tellen of deliberately concealing misconduct. I lost my temper," he admitted. "But it was just words. When I tried to leave, he grabbed my arm, slipped, and fell to the floor. I thought he was just dazed. I left because I feared the situation would be misunderstood." The statement was fully recorded. When asked why he did not call police or emergency services, Tellen replied that he believed Garner was only lightly stunned and did not want the matter blown up by the media. Lila sat silent for a few seconds after he finished. She pulled a printout of the DNA examination results from the file folder, placed it on the table, and turned the paper toward Tellen. You said you were only there for a few minutes, but your DNA was found on two independent pieces of evidence collected from two different locations, the 2003 scene and Garner's personal belongings in the newsroom. How do you explain that? Tellen looked down at the page, eyes moving slowly over the lines. Sample 1, Elliot Garner. Sample 2, Robert Tellen. Match 14 loci str. He said nothing, only tightening his grip on his hands. After a moment, he looked up, saying softly, I don't deny that contact may have occurred, but I didn't kill him. Maybe while helping him up, blood got on me. Lila did not respond. She opened the screen displaying extracted images from the recovered Postal Depot camera video, showing the red GMC Denali moving through the intersection near the scene at 4:37 p.m. The exact time Garner disappeared. This is the government vehicle under your office's management, correct? She asked. Tellen nodded, face tensing. Yes, my vehicle. Can you explain why it appeared in this area during non-office hours? Tellen was silent. She paused the video on the frame with the faint license plate reflection. 8H392. This is your plate. We have confirming records. He leaned back in the chair, hand over mouth, eyes vacant. After a while, he said quietly, I was there, that's true. But I had no intent to harm anyone. Things went too far. When asked what went too far meant, Tellen did not answer, only repeating, it was an accident. The statement was clearly noted in the minutes. Lila continued, Do you remember what you did after leaving the warehouse? Did you return? Tellen avoided her gaze, replying briefly, I drove home. When she asked about the reason for altering the government vehicle itinerary log, he pressed his lips slightly. I just didn't want people to misunderstand. At the time, I was a prosecutor. This could ruin my reputation. The interrogation lasted over 3 hours. Throughout, Tellen maintained control, not losing composure, but also not providing more information. When Lila presented further evidence images, the straw hat with Garner's blood and his own DNA, Tellen's only reaction was a slow blink, then turning his head away. She asked, Do you want to add anything to your statement? After a few seconds, he said in a low voice, I need time. I want to rest one night. Tomorrow, I'll explain more clearly. The interrogation minutes accurately recorded that request. Per regulations, the suspect's request for rest and counsel was granted. Lila ended the session by reading the entire minutes back for his confirmation. When signing, Tellen's handwriting trembled slightly, partly from fatigue, partly from something undetermined. Before leaving the room, he added one short sentence, almost to himself. Sometimes, just one small mistake follows you for life. After he was returned to temporary holding, Lila stayed in the empty room, replaying the camera video. The image of the red SUV glided across the screen, then vanished around the corner, exactly how Garner had disappeared 20 years earlier. In the end-of-day report, she wrote, Suspect Robert Tellen denies intentional murder, claims accident. When presented with DNA and vehicle image evidence, suspect non-reactive, silent. Interrogation ended at 16:57, suspect requests to restate tomorrow. She saved the recording file, signed confirmation, then left the room as hallway lights shifted to afternoon yellow. In case file MG 2347, for the first time in 20 years, Garner's and Tellen's names appeared in the same interrogation minutes, one in the victim column, one in the suspect column. The next morning, September 7, 2023, Robert Tellen was brought back to the second-floor interrogation room. He requested the presence of a public defender, appointed the previous night, and agreed to continue after being reminded of his right to silence. In the room were only 4 people: Lila Myers, a minutes officer, the attorney, and Tellen himself. The silence was so complete, the scratching of the pen on the steel table could be heard. When the recorder was turned on, Lila began, You said yesterday you wanted to clarify further. "Are you ready?" Tellen nodded slightly. Voice hoarse, somewhat weary. "I thought all night, now perhaps I should tell everything." He sat up straight, hands placed in front, gaze dropping to the floor as if retracing memories. "There was a scuffle," he said. "And Garner did die during it." According to Tellen's account, that afternoon he arrived at the warehouse as arranged, bringing the file Garner requested. The initial conversation remained courteous, but soon Garner questioned murky expenditures in the public land project overseen by the prosecutor's office. He said, "I knew more than I was allowed," Tellen recounted. "That I was shielding some people on the county committee. I tried to explain, but he wouldn't listen." Tension rose when Garner stepped closer, holding the documents in front of Tellen and saying he would expose everything. "I pushed him away," Tellen said, voice trembling, but Garner slipped. "We both fell. I don't know how his head hit the iron table edge." There was a loud thud, then he lay still. Lila asked, "Did you check if he was still alive?" Tellen nodded, eyes red. "I knelt down, shook his shoulder, called his name. There was blood flowing from the back of his head. I felt for a pulse, but felt nothing. I panicked. I was a prosecutor. I knew this would destroy me. I couldn't think of anything except leaving." The statement was recorded word for word. He paused a few seconds, then added, "I went back later. When it was dark, Lila looked up, eyes sharp. Why did you return?" "I couldn't leave the body there. I was afraid someone would find it. I returned with a tarp and sacks. I dragged him through the back door, down to the technical area." The technical area Tellen mentioned was an old tunnel system running beneath Menomonee Valley, once used for electrical wiring and gas pipes in the 1970s. The system was later abandoned and sealed, but many sections remained. "I had worked in infrastructure management. I knew there was an unsealed access tunnel in that area." Tellen continued, "I dragged him there, placed him in a wall recess, then covered with old cement bags. I thought no one would find him." When asked why he did not call police, he only shook his head. "I didn't have the courage. I feared no one would believe it was an accident. I buried it, and with each passing year, I could less return." The attorney beside him only silently took notes. Lila maintained an even tone, asking him to describe the exact location. Tellen closed his eyes for a few seconds, as if visualizing the layout. "The warehouse is next to the old rail line, southwest direction. At the back is an iron door leading to the technical level. The stairs are only half there. If you go down to the left is a long corridor. At the end is a broken wall. Behind that wall is a side tunnel. I placed him there." He paused, pulled a folded, wrinkled paper from his shirt pocket. "I drew it last night," he said. Lila signaled the officer to collect the paper and unfold it. It was a rough sketch in blue ballpoint, warehouse layout, arrow pointing toward the rail line, and an X marking the spot in the tunnel. In the corner, Tellen signed his name. The map was photographed and stored as evidence on the spot. Lila asked one final time for confirmation. "Are you sure that's the location where you left Garner?" Tellen answered, without hesitation. "Certain. I never returned, but I remember the cement smell and dripping water clearly. It haunted me for 20 years. He took a breath, voice softening. "I didn't intend to kill him. I was just afraid, and fear made me do something worse than death." The interrogation lasted over an hour more to record tunnel area details. Technical officers were called in to verify if the diagram matched 2003 infrastructure maps. After comparison, they confirmed the area existed, though access had been sealed during the 2006 industrial redevelopment. A copy of the map was immediately sent to the field unit to prepare an excavation plan. The chief prosecutor was directly notified and ordered a task force coordinating with city technical departments to survey the site. When the interrogation ended, Robert Tellen signed confirmation of the entire statement. He stood slowly, eyes vacant, voice faltering. "I didn't know he was still there. I thought time could erase it, but it only weighed heavier." Lila did not respond, only watching silently as police escorted him out. On the table, The folded map lay, its scribbled but clear lines, like a final guide to a place untouched for 2 decades. In the end-of-day report she wrote, "Suspect Robert Tellen confesses to concealing victim's body after scuffle at Menomonee Valley warehouse. Provides diagram of body disposal location in old technical tunnel. Preliminary location, match verified. Recommend excavation plan." 3 days after the second interrogation, the area designated by Robert Tellen's map was completely cordoned off. The Milwaukee Police Department forensic team, coordinating with city technical departments and emergency rescue units, began excavation. The site was on the western edge of Menomonee Valley, in land now part of a new transport company's container yard. After the state prosecutor worked with local authorities, an area of about 100 square meters was enclosed with temporary fencing. Technical agencies confirmed an old tunnel system beneath the yard's concrete layer, matching Tellen's diagram. 1978 infrastructure drawings recorded a technical side tunnel at that spot leading to power supply pipes, sealed during the 2006 industrial redevelopment. Access had to proceed cautiously due to collapse or toxic gas risks. Early morning on September 11, 2023, the excavation officially began. The technical team drilled and cut a square concrete section at the marked location on the map, down nearly 3 meters. After a few hours, the drill bit reached the hollow space, the old technical tunnel void. A damp, rusty metal smell rose as the first concrete slab was removed. Forensic personnel in protective gear, masks, and headlamps descended the tunnel via a temporary iron ladder one by one. The space below was barely taller than a person, cement walls covered in green moss, water trickling in thin streams along the sides. In the southwest corner, where the floor sank into a deep recess, headlamp beams revealed an unusual object. It was a rotted industrial fiber sack, covered in a thick layer of cement dust. When the outer sack was removed, inside were human bones, folded compactly in a curled position. The scene was immediately marked. All activity halted for photography and 3D laser scanning to create a digital scene reconstruction. Besides the skeleton, the forensic team found 2 objects nearby, a steel wristwatch and a hard plastic press badge printed with Elliot Garner, Milwaukee Sentinel. The watch strap was broken. The face stopped at 442. The press badge was yellowed, but the lettering still legible. Forensic personnel placed both items in separate sealed bags. The entire skeleton was collected part by part, divided into 4 groups: skull, torso, upper limbs, and lower limbs. The bone fragments remained in relatively complete anatomical positions, with no signs of scattering. The tunnel floor was cleared to search for additional evidence. Under a thin layer of clay, they found a rubber cord about 2 meters long, coated in cement dust, and a large fabric piece with a logo from an old construction company that once operated in the area. All evidence was numbered and photographed on-site before sealing. After nearly 8 hours of work, collection was complete. The body was placed in a white preservation bag, transported by specialized vehicle to the Milwaukee County Forensic Lab. Lila Myers was present throughout the excavation, noting every step. She said little, only watching silently as the bag containing the remains was brought to the surface. The first sunlight in 20 years shining on the place that had buried the truth. That same afternoon, preliminary examination was conducted at the forensic lab. Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Howard Lynn began with full-body X-rays of the bones. Results showed a large fracture in the right occipital region of the skull, the crack extending to the base, consistent with a strong impact against a hard object. No bullet traces or sharp force injuries. During sample cleaning, technicians found several remaining hairs adhered to the skull, dark brown, matching the victim's file description. The remaining parts were checked and showed no other injuries. In parallel, femur bone and tooth samples were sent to the DNA lab for identity confirmation. Comparison with Garner's medical records and family DNA samples showed absolute match. The official report signed by Dr. Lynn concluded, remains found at the Menomonee Valley Technical Tunnel location belonged to Elliot Garner, missing October 2003. Below was his handwritten note. Time of death consistent with recorded disappearance time frame. No post-mortem scattering signs, body concealed immediately after death. The accompanying evidence was examined separately. The wristwatch stopped at 4:42, nearly exactly matching Garner's phone signal loss data. The press badge was confirmed as the original issued by the Milwaukee Sentinel, with signature and employee number matching newsroom archives. The rubber cord and fabric piece from the tunnel carried no human DNA, but were coated in the same cement dust type as the layer around the bones, reinforcing Tellin's statement about covering the body with cement bags. The 14-page scene report was compiled that evening. The final summary stated, at the location provided by suspect Robert Tellin, authorities discovered human remains, victim Elliot Garner's watch and press badge. DNA examination confirms victim identity, cause of death, cranial trauma from strong impact. Remains transferred to forensic lab for detailed analysis. Upon completion, the tunnel area was resealed, covered with tarps, and protected by fencing. A small sign reading "Investigation Area, No Unauthorized Entry," was posted at the container yard gate. On the ground, only white chalk marks remained where the body was found. From afar, the yellow lights of the specialized vehicle glowed, reflecting the scene from 20 years earlier. A moment time had finally stopped, carrying the final evidence of a once-forgotten disappearance. The final autopsy results for Elliot Garner were officially released 10 days after excavation completion. The Milwaukee County Forensic Lab, under Dr. Howard Lynn's supervision, conducted detailed examination of the entire remains, focusing on injury mechanism and traces related to body movement. The autopsy proceeded in 3 phases: structural reconstruction, injury analysis, and mechanical posture recreation. As bone fragments were repositioned, the victim's body shape gradually emerged in the cold lab space. The right occipital fracture extended 7.4 centimeters, with sharp-edged cracks, no time-related abrasion. Through measurements, Dr. Lynn determined the impact force equivalent to a strong strike against a flat, hard surface, likely the metal table edge or concrete floor. Inside the skull was a depression, typical of rear right force trauma, fully matching Robert Tellin's statement about Garner falling and hitting his head on the iron table edge. The cheekbone and lower jaw showed no impact signs, indicating the blow or fall occurred once, focused at the rear. No other violence traces on the body, no rib fractures, no limb injuries. The autopsy report concluded the victim lost consciousness immediately after impact and died within less than a minute due to severe brain trauma causing internal bleeding. Rigidity signs in the neck and arms indicated no binding or resistance attempt. This reinforced that death was not prolonged, with no torture or multiple assaults. In parallel, the forensic team examined objects recovered with the body. On the fiber sack and covering fabric were multiple parallel drag marks about 30 centimeters long, running from the sack edge to the mid-body. Fiber and cement dust structure analysis showed these marks formed when a heavy object was dragged over concrete. Dust and sand samples on the sack matched the chemical composition of the 2003 warehouse floor bloodstain sample. This proved the body was dragged from the freight elevator area to the technical level, as Tellin stated. On the rear of the right humerus, the team found abrasion scratches, bone surface slightly darkened, consistent with being dragged while unresponsive. Slight depressions on the rear skull indicated the impact was not from free fall, but horizontal or angled collision. Fracture depth and impact angle helped Dr. Lynn determine force direction, top down, right to left, height about 1.2 meters from ground, matching the steel table edge height in the industrial warehouse. The report stated clearly, fatal injury could occur when victim fell from standing position, head striking hard-edged metal table. However, the next section emphasized, drag marks and purposeful body movement indicate post-mortem intervention. No signs of attempted resuscitation or medical assistance. In microtrace analysis, Technicians found fine dry cement dust on the ribs, matching the type from the sacks. This confirmed the body was covered with construction materials immediately after placement in the technical tunnel. Mud samples around the leg bones contained sac fiber molecules and nylon residue, showing the original containment sac decomposed in place. All results agreed that body concealment was not an immediate panic reaction, but a prepared act. The perpetrator returned to the scene, moved the body, and created a covering to avoid detection. The watch and press badge examination was included in the final conclusion. The watch stopped at 4:42, matching Garner's phone signal lost time, proving death very close to disappearance. The watch glass was scratched, but not shattered, indicating the fall angled toward the head, no wrist impact. The press badge carried the same cement dust type, proving it was left with the body during concealment. The over 50-page comprehensive autopsy report was sent to the state prosecutor in late September 2023. The summary conclusion stated clearly: 1. Cause of death: closed cranial brain trauma from strong impact against hard object. Mechanism of death: backward fall, head striking metal table edge. 3. Time of death: approximately 16:40–16:45 on October 17, 2003, matching phone signal data. 4. Post-mortem condition: body dragged approximately 20–25 meters, moved to technical level, and covered with cement sacks. 5. Behavior assessment: signs of intentional movement and concealment of body after victim death. No assistance actions detected. Dr. Lin concluded in the expert opinion section: death occurred on site, not after movement. Body was transferred to tunnel for concealment. Situation may have begun with brief scuffle leading to impact, followed by purposeful post-mortem handling. The report was signed by Chief Prosecutor Margaret Holbrook and added to the case file under document code FME 2309. In the final note, Lila Myers wrote, "Autopsy confirms victim died instantly from injury, no subsequent accident factors. Evidence of dragging and concealment reinforces intentional trace erasure." As she closed the thick file, the white cover bore only 3 simple lines: Elliot Garner, male, 56. Cause of death: blunt force trauma. Manner: concealed post-mortem. A concise entry, but enough to close 20 years of questions the city had left open. When the final forensic report reached the cold case unit desk, Detective Lila Myers spent the entire night reading every page, cross-referencing with all materials collected over 11 months of investigation. On the electronic data board, she rearranged all evidence in chronological order, from the first 2003 items to the September 2023 body excavation. Each scattered detail had become a seamless logical chain with no gaps. At the chain's start was the dried blood streak on the warehouse railing. Next, the straw hat found in the newsroom storage, then the secondary DNA matching Robert Tellen, and finally, Elliot Garner's body, found exactly where the suspect drew on the map. Each element was reinforced by independent examination results and cross-verification. Combined, they formed a complete evidence structure, not only retelling the case story, but scientifically proving the act and its consequences. Lila wrote in the summary, "Evidence chain consists of 5 layers. 1. DNA traces at scene. 2. Secondary DNA on personal item. 3. Confession with confirmed concealment map. 4. Body excavation matching location. 5. Forensic report determining cause of death and concealment behavior." Each layer was illustrated with documents, scene photos, and expert confirmations. Beyond biological factors, she added behavioral evidence: the red Denali government vehicle used outside hours, Postal Depot camera video capturing the SUV at the scene, and Tellen's altered vehicle itinerary log. When all aligned in sequence, the connections between points were unbroken. Garner leaving the newsroom, meeting Tellen at the warehouse, scuffle occurring, victim dying, body moved and concealed. The complete compilation was over 120 pages, with examination appendices and 23 original evidence items. It was the first time in 20 years that file MG 2347 was fully updated in every section: scene, witnesses, evidence, vehicles, and victim. Layla submitted the entire file to the Wisconsin State Prosecutor in early October 2023. The evaluation meeting was held at the prosecutor's office in Madison, attended by the Milwaukee County investigation head, forensic experts, and cold case unit representatives. Layla presented the entire reinvestigation process in over 3 hours, from discovering old evidence to finding the body. The large projection screen displayed her evidence chain diagram, branches connected by color codes: red for DNA, green for behavior, yellow for physical evidence. When the presentation ended, Chief Prosecutor Margaret Holbrook said briefly, "This is an irrefutable file." That same afternoon, Holbrook signed the criminal indictment against Robert Tellen on 3 charges: second-degree reckless homicide, concealing a corpse, and destroying physical evidence. The indictment basis relied on sections 940.0, 6 and 946.4, one of the Wisconsin Criminal Code, allowing prosecution for unintentional death with serious negligence factors, along with intentional scene alteration. In the 16-page indictment, the state prosecutor affirmed Robert Tellen's actions, whether with or without initial intent, directly caused Elliot Garner's death and were followed by a conscious chain of acts to conceal the consequences. Physical, biological evidence and the defendant's own statements are sufficient to prove the incident exceeds accident scope. Immediately after the indictment was signed, Tellen was transferred from the Franklin Detention Center to the Milwaukee County Jail, awaiting trial. A brief press release was issued. The Wisconsin State Prosecutor's Office has completed charges against former prosecutor Robert Tellen in connection with the 2003 disappearance of reporter Elliot Garner. The news spread quickly in local media, shocking not only due to the case itself, but also Tellen's former position. The Milwaukee Sentinel, where Garner once worked, ran a short front-page headline: "Cold Case 2003 Reopened. Former ADA Charged in Garner Disappearance." Legally, the case file was transferred to the Milwaukee County Court for trial scheduling. Judge Richard P. Whitman was assigned to preside. The state prosecutor's office formed a special prosecution team of 3 prosecutors, led by Holbrook. They worked with the cold case unit to prepare court evidence. Tellen, through defense counsel, formally filed for bail, but it was denied due to risk of obstructing investigation. He was held pending arraignment. Meanwhile, Layla Myers continued coordinating between police and prosecution, ensuring all documents were digitized and stored per standards before court transfer. In the final report to the prosecutor's office, Layla wrote, "Evidence chain is closed. All elements, DNA, physical evidence, statements, body, vehicle, connect consistently, eliminating coincidence. Forensic results confirm death mechanism. Investigation objectives achieved, determine cause, circumstances, and responsible party." Below, she signed with a firm stroke, marking the end of the investigation phase and transition to trial. That afternoon, when the court issued the official notice, file MG 2347 shifted from cold case, reopened, to criminal case, pending trial. In the electronic system, the case status line displayed red, active prosecution. In the cold case headquarters hallway, Layla paused before the solved cases board. Among 1980s black and white photos, a new color image was pinned: the Menomonee Valley warehouse, yellow tape and caption below, "Case closed, ready for court." She stood silently for a few seconds, then turned away. 20 years earlier, Elliot Garner's disappearance ended with a question mark. Now, it was ready for justice's light. The trial of Robert Tellen opened on the morning of January 3, 2024, at the Milwaukee County Court. Winter cold, fog covering the stone steps leading in. Courtroom 2B was packed with reporters and spectators, mostly familiar faces from the case: Garner's old colleagues, a few victim family members, and those who worked with Tellen in the prosecutor's office nearly 20 years ago. Judge Richard P. Whitman presided. When the doors opened, defendant Robert Tellen entered in a dark suit, gray hair, slow gait, but still calm. He sat in the defendant's chair, hands clasped, eyes straight to the bench. Before him was the three-prosecutor team led by Margaret Holbrook. Opposite were two court-appointed defense attorneys. The room was absolutely silent as the judge read the opening. Case number 23-458, Y State of Wisconsin v. Robert Tellen, defendant charged with second-degree reckless homicide, concealing a corpse, and destroying evidence. The prosecution presentation began with Holbrook's opening statement, her voice clear, decisive. This is not a case about an accident. This is a case about an act hidden for 20 years. The evidence we present today, DNA, statements, physical items, and forensic results will show the defendant not only caused Elliot Garner's death, but intentionally erased the truth. After the statement, prosecutors sequentially presented physical evidence, the steel railing with blood, the straw hat from the newsroom, camera footage of the red GMC Denali near the scene, and the forensic report confirming cause of death. Each item was projected on the large screen. Scene photos, DNA scans, and current diagrams, all reconnecting into a logical timeline. The first witness called was Detective Lila Myers, head of the reinvestigation. She detailed the file recovery process, from discovering the unanalyzed blood sample in storage to excavating the body. Her voice steady, unemphasized, but every detail clear and consistent. When Holbrook asked, "Do you have any doubt about the evidence chain accuracy?" Lila replied briefly, "No. All evidence matches, no discrepancy possible." Next, the prosecution called the Wisconsin State DNA expert, who confirmed 14 loci match between the blood and Tellen's DNA, random probability 1 in a billion. The courtroom was silent as he concluded, no way to explain this DNA presence, except direct contact between the two individuals. Defense began countering by arguing Garner's death was an unintentional accident. Lead attorney Henry Cates stood, voice low and slow, "My client admitted being at the scene. But because the victim invited him, they argued, and in chaos, Garner slipped and fell. No evidence proves Tellen intentionally injured. He panicked, acted wrongly by not calling police, but that was weakness, not murder." He asked the jury to consider full human context. A 20-year public servant, no prior record, no hatred motive. Defense focused on the accidental element and attempted to mitigate concealment. They argued body movement in panic did not equal intent to hide a crime. They also questioned 20-year-old body examination accuracy. However, during prosecution rebuttal, these arguments lost weight. Holbrook projected Garner's skull X-ray with clear fracture, saying, "A random impact does not leave 25-meter drag marks. An accidental person does not return with cement sacks to conceal. This is not panic reaction, but calculation." By mid-third session, prosecution played part of the interrogation video where Tellen said, "I didn't have courage to call police. I buried him, and each passing year I could less return." The words echoed in the courtroom. Many heads bowed. Holbrook only said, "His own words confirm what we need. No one is charged for accident. Only when they try to hide it." At session end, Tellen was allowed to speak. He stood, voice hoarse, slow. "I had no intent to kill Elliot. We argued, and he fell. But I concealed. I know I was wrong, and I lived with it for 20 years. I don't seek forgiveness, only that people understand I did not do it out of hatred." He sat, hands trembling slightly, not looking at the jury. On the final argument day, both sides held firm. Holbrook asserted the defendant's actions could not be seen as accident. When a person conceals a body, falsifies documents, and stays silent for 2 decades, he no longer has right to call it accident. He chose lies over justice. Defense maintained intent to kill unproven, but could not refute purposeful concealment. On the 5th afternoon, Judge Whitman read the jury charge. "You may consider unintentional factor in the act causing death, but cannot deny the subsequent chain, moving the body, covering with cement sacks, altering official records. Those acts were purposeful. The jury left to deliberate in silence. 2 hours later they returned, faces grave. Before the judge read the verdict, Holbrook looked down at the file, hands gently folding. Below the line State of Wisconsin vs. Robert Tellen, all evidence lay DNA, items, map, statements, and 20 years of silence. When the judge announced the conclusion, the room remained silent. The first sentence read slowly. The jury unanimously finds defendant Robert Tellen not guilty of intentional homicide, but guilty of second-degree reckless homicide and intentional corpse concealment. No murmurs, no cheers, only the recorder running steadily. The intentional concealment, once buried in files, was now officially confirmed by the court, becoming the pivotal point closing 20 years of debate. On the morning of January 8, 2024, the Milwaukee County Court reopened the final session to pronounce sentence. Outside, light snow rain fell, cold gusts blowing past waiting crowds, reporters, citizens, and a few of Elliot Garner's old colleagues. The courtroom atmosphere was so quiet the sound of shoes on the wooden floor was audible as the jury entered. Each face heavy. Judge Richard P. Whitman sat at the high bench, before him the thick file marked with colored tabs. He tapped the gavel lightly, voice even. The case of State of Wisconsin vs. Robert Tellen continues for jury verdict announcement. Tellen stood when called. He wore a gray suit, noticeably thinner than at arrest. Hands clasped in front, eyes down. His attorney stood beside, silent. The judge looked to the jury foreperson, a middle-aged woman. She held a folded paper, voice clear, slightly trembling. The jury, after considering all evidence, has reached a conclusion. On the first charge, second-degree reckless homicide, guilty. On the second charge, concealing a corpse, guilty. On the third charge, destroying and falsifying evidence, guilty. A moment of silence enveloped the room. Tellen closed his eyes, sighed, shoulders slightly slumping. In the back row, Garner's eldest son gripped his mother's hand tightly, tears rolling down her cheeks, not from joy, but from something too late. Chief Prosecutor Holbrook only nodded slightly, then organized the files on the table. The judge asked the defendant to sit and moved to sentencing. He read slowly, clearly, pursuant to sections 940.06 and 946.4. 1 of the Wisconsin Criminal Code, with mitigating factors considered including no prior record and cooperation with investigation. The court sentences defendant Robert Tellen to 30 years imprisonment, comprising 20 years for reckless homicide and 10 years for concealment and evidence destruction, to be served consecutively. The gavel sound rang dryly, echoing in the courtroom. The sentence was immediately recorded in the minutes, with signatures from the judge and clerk. Whitman looked directly at the defendant. Mr. Tellen, the court finds you had no intent to kill the victim, but you caused his death and chose to conceal it for 2 decades. Justice cannot be buried under cement and fear. This sentence reminds that truth always finds its way back. Robert Tellen listened silently, eyes clouded, no protest, no complaint. When asked if he wished final words before adjournment, he stood, hands trembling. I make no excuse. I lived 20 years in fear I created. I don't seek forgiveness, only that he, Garner, somewhere, knows I told the truth. His voice hoarse, breaking at the end. The judge recorded the statement. Immediately after, judicial police approached to cuff the defendant. As he was led away, he glanced toward the back, where the Garner family sat, but no one returned the look. Ceiling lights reflected in the weary eyes of the once prosecutor, now convict. When the courtroom door closed behind him, the remaining space held only shifting chairs and tired breaths of those left. In the hallway outside, reporters quickly sent the first bulletin. Former prosecutor Robert Tellen, sentenced to 30 years in 2003 reporter Elliot Garner disappearance case. The news spread statewide within hours. Media described it as the most successfully resolved cold case in Milwaukee County history, proof of forensic technology persistence and investigator determination. At the cold case unit, Lila Myers received a copy of the sentence with the completed file. The red line on the first page read, "Case status, solved, closed." She read the 3 words in silence, then placed the file in the completed, finalized storage cabinet. In her personal notebook, she wrote, January 8, 2024. Garner case officially closed. Below, she drew a small line, then closed the pen. That same day, the Milwaukee Sentinel published an editorial memorializing Elliot Garner, who dedicated over 3 decades to journalism. The piece ended with a short sentence. Justice may come slowly, but it never stays silent forever. Those who worked with him gathered at the newsroom, placing a white flower bouquet under an old wall photo. The image showed Garner smiling, wearing his familiar straw hat, with new caption below, Reporter Elliot Garner, 1947-2003. Case resolved. That afternoon, when the Garner file was entered into the Milwaukee Police Department electronic system with final status, solved, closed, a new data line automatically appeared in the notes, cold case, resolution, justice achieved. 20 years after the disappearance, Elliot Garner's name moved from the missing persons list to resolved cases. And in the cold storage of the old building, evidence box MG 2347 was sealed for the last time, marking the complete end of a 2-decade journey. The Elliot Garner case is a clear testament to the value of perseverance, integrity, and faith in justice, core values still shaping American society today. The story began with an honest reporter daring to question power and local government transparency, and ended with truth restored after 2 decades through science's power and the tenacity of those refusing to give up. Without Detective Lila Myers' dedication, reviewing every old evidence box, discovering the unanalyzed DNA blood sample, or without careful 2003 evidence preservation, justice might have been buried forever with Garner. In the modern context, where public trust in legal systems and journalism sometimes wavers, this story reminds us that truth never vanishes. It only awaits brave people to seek it. The Garner lesson is not only for investigators or legal professionals, but for every American citizen. Maintain faith in evidence value, transparency, and personal responsibility. In today's high-tech society, where data can be manipulated or forgotten, this story affirms technology only matters when guided by ethics and integrity. Justice arriving 20 years late reminds that scientific progress, like DNA technology, only truly matters when used for fairness and human dignity. The Garner case, therefore, is not just the closure of a criminal file, but a profound reminder that in America, time may fade everything except the truth. Thank you for following to the end of the journey to restore justice for reporter Elliot Garner, proof that truth can be buried, but never disappears. Please subscribe to the channel to continue exploring other cold cases across America with us, where time, science, and determination keep speaking for justice.